Yep, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. You haven't heard that music in quite some time, and we are just so excited to bring you Cold War Radio back again. We are back from a pretty long hiatus. There are several reasons for this that we're not really going to get into. We're just going to say that we're happy to be back in orbit and back doing live radio. It's been a long time, and it's my pleasure to welcome the vanguard of the Southern Perimeter, Mr. J, back to the operation. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and it is my pleasure to be back. Cold War Radio is retooled, new hardware, new software, but same Cold War Radio history.
And it's a time. It's funny the way things line up. I mean, there's so many things going on right now that are directly related to the Cold War, especially with the Olympics, and we're going to get into that in a second. But again, I just want to say, Mr. J, this is we've done a lot of television in between, and we've done some podcasting and a little bit of live radio. But I think if this works out, which I believe it probably will, we're on to bigger and better things. And I spoke with a certain network. I didn't spoke. I communicated with CPR Radio, and they're ready to have us. So it's only a matter of the technical testing that we're doing this evening and getting a time slot. So that's pretty exciting.
It is, and CPR media is right up our alley. That would so broaden our audience and bring in some great people from Australia, South Africa, and Great Britain, all of which were pivotal in the Cold War.
Yeah, and we've even decided we're going to set aside a special segment every week, or I'm not sure the frequency of that the show's going to partake. I don't know how many times a week we're going to do a show, but let's just start with our base of once a week. So every week we're going to try to do a segment that pertains to one of the countries overseas. So that'll be interesting, and it'll actually be fun to dig through and find some of those stories, because like you said, they were pivotal.
That's exactly right, and it'll give us a chance to really find out what's going on over there, because that's kind of an area that we kind of glance over because we're so focused on what's going on stateside. So I am really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I am too. And one of the ways we can begin to do that, it's not really concerning the audience members of CPR per se, but the Olympics were always a Cold War event. I'm sure you remember, and our listeners remember, the battles just between China and the Soviet Union and the United States, and all of the, I don't know, like the things that happened behind your back, and the cloak and dagger things, and the referees and the judges being questioned and things like that. Well, right now, NBC, to its embarrassment, I mean, NBC has just gone so far down lately that you had Bob Pink Eye Costas. He took some heat for portraying Russian strongman Vladimir Putin as an amiable and even-handed diplomat. I mean, this guy was a KGB agent, and NBC has just had this love affair going on with Russia. It's really sickening. I mean, the coverage of these games and the lack of the history behind Russia and what they've actually done is just it's sickening, and it's almost criminal.
It is, and it's really, it just goes to show you how or what's going on at NBC and MSNBC. I mean, they are so far out of the mainstream, so far out of reality, and to watch what they're doing here and to portray Putin as some kind of hero of some kind, it's just crazy.
I mean, a lot of people will remember the 1980s Miracle on Ice when the United States beat the USSR. But in their primetime wrap-up of the day's events, NBC failed to show any highlights from the 3-2 USA victory. Neither did they show highlights of the 1980s Miracle on Ice at Lake Placid. There, a team of American collegians defeated a Soviet team. This was before NHL players got to be on the squad. And so they defeated a Soviet team of seasoned professionals easily on par with the best NHL players and considered a lock for the gold medal. It was as though the junior varsity of Yale or Rutgers had vanquished the mighty Montreal Canadiens in their prime, but none of that for the viewers, even though NBC had on hand Al Michaels, who called the 1980 game, and in the closing seconds famously said, "Do you believe in miracles?" I mean, this is just out of Propaganda 101. They hate America.
They absolutely do, and it just goes to show you how far this network has gone down the road to, a propaganda. Really, I mean, it's now gone into the sports, and it's not just this, but it's many other, sporting events and what they're doing to sports. But I mean, they have managed to mix in geopolitics into something like this, where they should be promoting, the United States. I mean, that's the whole point of the Olympics, is to root for your side, and they're just not really taking the time to do that too much.
No, I mean, they had this guy on hand that called the Miracle on Ice, and NBC did not have Michaels narrate any highlights from 1980. Instead, they had him talk about the game. In television, talking just doesn't get it, and Michaels seemed embarrassed, not only at the dearth of highlights, but the rest of the fare. I mean, then Tom Brokaw came in, not with some memorable moment from the current or past Olympics, of which there are many. The United States also won a gold medal in hockey at the 1960 Olympics at Squaw Valley, California, beating out the USSR and Canada with a no-name team of amateurs. More than a few from that team are still around, including goalie Jack McCartan. The USA's 1956 silver medal in hockey was another milestone performance, but Tom Brokaw did not showcase any athletes from any country and nothing about sports at all. Instead, in his marble mouth style, inflicted on viewers a documentary about the space race between the United States and Soviet Union. The interview subjects included U.S. astronauts John Glenn, Jim Lovell, and Tom Stafford, and Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov, Natalia Korolev, whose father Sergei Korolev directed, I forgot how hard it was going to be to enunciate this show, directed the Soviet space program and made an appearance. So, it's just it's embarrassing, and there's no need for it. There's so many heroics and things to be proud of in this area, and NBC just refuses to do it. They refuse to wave any kind of flag at all if it's ours.
Yeah, Jim Bell, executive producer of NBC Olympics, said the space race piece would give our audience a fresh perspective on how the Russian people experienced the race and, to a degree, the Cold War. And as Brokaw put it, we went from pointing missiles at each other to exploring the heavens together. The men who pulled it off, cosmonauts and astronauts, all had the right stuff. They became lifelong friends. It's how the world should work all the time. Brokaw's piece conveyed the idea that the USA and USSR were simply two large nations trying to outdo each other in space. The implication was that the two nations were more similar than different, which isn't true. I mean, that's a joke.
Yeah, I guess he forgets the bread lines and forgets what happened to the Ukraine and things like that, and all the spying and everything else. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The whole thing. I mean, and then you have the FCC today. They were beaten back thanks to people like us. And I have to give some of the media outlets credit. They did realize that they were getting put in the target. Some of them did. Some of them did not. Some of them still think that the leftist government is their friend, and they just don't know history very well. It would behoove them to study Soviet media and how that went for them. But the FCC was going to put people, bureaucrats in every newsroom across the country to do a study to see that apparently they didn't think that the private news media, according to Hillary Clinton, doesn't have the wherewithal to report on America culturally, culturally correctly, so it's, I'm sure you were watching that unfold.
Oh yeah, it reminded me of the fairness doctrine that they were trying to pass a few years back, but I mean, we're going down the Hugo Chavez USSR road with this. I mean, and the lack of response, I mean, there was some response in some media, but for the rest of it, I mean, it seemed like they were okay with it. I mean, that would be the one thing. Why even have a news office? You're not a news office anymore. You're just a propaganda outlet if you've got the government in there.
And that's what they've devolved into, and they think that these people are their friends, and they fail to realize that they'll be the first ones taken out. And I wish I could remember the name of the FCC chief, but right at the beginning of Obama's first term, he was exposed, and he admires Hugo Chavez. I mean, he said it. It was verbatim. He mentioned the guy's name and said that he loved the way his control of the media was, and this guy was the head of the FCC. And so you saw this coming, and it's all linked back to the fairness doctrine. I mean, it's unbelievable the MSNBCs and the CBSs that would go along with this. It makes no sense, and it's something that is what you're seeing. I think, Mr. J, is I think you've seen. I made a list the other night, and there's about 5 amendments to the Constitution, actually bills of right in the Bill of Rights, the first 10. There's a lot of attacks, and I think what it is, like you saw the attack on the Second Amendment, you see the attack on the First Amendment all the time with religion and speech, and you see different unfair, unlawful imprisonments and imprisonment without trial and things like that. You look at the guy that made that movie about Islam that had nothing to do with Benghazi. I think he's still in jail. But I think you're seeing attacks to see I think they're trying to see how far they can go before we'll bite back.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, that they've been doing that for quite a while, but it seems like, they've just ramped up since Obama's been in office. I mean, this guy appoints socialists and Marxists, and a lot of them don't get booted out. I think we booted out 1 or 2 of them, but I mean, they just seem, if they get booted out, he just puts in another one, and people just don't seem to recognize it or are not paying attention to who he's putting in there, and the people in our Congress aren't really putting up much of a fight, it seems, to stop some of these appointments.
No, they're not, and that's one of the major problems. They're ceding control to the executive branch, and you're exactly right with these czars or these other people. I mean, and we can link it right back to the media again. Look at Van Jones, a self-proclaimed communist, and he works at CNN now. I think he's with CNN. He's on the other side of Newt Gingrich on one of the networks. But this is a self-avowed communist that one of his goals was to get people out of prison, to get felons out of prison. I mean, this guy's something, man. Van Jones is trouble, and they scooped him right up at the network.
That's right, and that's why you're my partner, because that was the name I was trying to dig up. But it was you can put it all on Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck was the reason that guy got booted out, and that is the absolute truth. And
he's the one that brought them all out.
Yeah,
he brought every one of them out. I can't remember what the lady's name was. I'm trying to remember her name. She stood in a church pulpit and said that Mao Zedong was one of her favorite people. And she was in charge of communications at the White House, and they recycled her around a little bit, and I saw her on television the other day. I mean, they don't even go away, these people.
No, it's like they've got a guaranteed job somewhere, whether it's in the government or the media.
There's some bad ones too. I mean, I'm trying to remember the guy's name that his wife just got selected as the United Nations ambassador, and he's the regulations czar, Cass Sunstein. Mm-hmm. Cass Sunstein and his wife Ethel, or whatever her name is. But anyway, she went to the United Nations, and these people are bad people. Now the media is really not fulfilling their mission in the slightest when it comes to Christians, and this is still a Christian country, no matter what they want to try to portray it as. But there's some real terror going on in Africa, and it's been going on for several years. At least I've been reporting on it for the duration of the show. But at least 90 Christians were slaughtered by Islamist terrorists in Nigeria. You know, this is something that gets me. I'm going to go off the trail here a little bit on a subject that blows my mind. Actually, two. I could never understand how a black American could convert to Islam. That just never, I for the life of me, I don't think they study history, the ones that convert, but don't they realize that in Islam they are hated and they are taken slaves? I mean, the Arabs in Africa have so decimated the black Africans in some of these countries. It's just barbaric.
You know, I think they mix in some black liberation theology and just, you know, fool these people into thinking, you know, that this is your only way. This is where you need to be because these other people, these white guys over here, these Americans, they don't like you. And I think they throw in some theology in there, some of that liberation theology, and dupe these people into this. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because the black community in this country has been, you know, primarily Christian for so long. You can't wonder. I mean, you wonder why they would convert because it's such a huge difference between the two. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know, Islamic Arabs are some of the most racist people on the planet. I don't know if you recall when the revolution in Libya started kicking off, but there were a lot of black Africans from other parts of the continent that were contractors there and that were doing other things. They were target number one. They were picking them off immediately. I mean, a little bit of history would serve some Americans well before you jump into this thing, because I'm telling you what, they don't respect you and they don't like you. And that's just the way it is. And the other thing, I read an article today that stunned me. And this is another thing that I can't understand, how black Americans are so for the Democrat Party and so for Planned Parenthood. Now, we have to start at the beginning of Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger, one of the heroes of the left. I mean, the heroines of the left. And she had specific goals in mind with Planned Parenthood, and she used some wording that was, I wish I had it in front of me, but it was along the lines of she wanted to weed out the undesirables in the population in the United States. And one of the biggest weeds was black Americans. You know, there was others. There was different sicknesses and different gene pools like that. And that's what Planned Parenthood was designed to do, was to weed out the population control and eugenics and everything else. And I read an article today that in New York City last year, more black babies were aborted than were born. So Margaret Sanger's plan is going directly according to plan, and all you Democrats, black Democrats, I don't see how the white Democrats sell this to the black Democrats. It blows me away.
I got a side note on that, too. You're right. I mean, you could put 3/4 of the abortion business out of business if you removed the black community out of it. If they weren't having abortions, these guys would be practically out of business. But the numbers you talked about in New York City, I went on a show with a black female host, and she was talking about abortion, and I asked her point blank, what do you think of that? I said, you got more blacks being aborted than being born in New York City. What do you think of that? and it was like, well, I didn't know that, and she just kind of blew it off like it didn't really matter. I mean, this is your people here that are getting, butchered and slaughtered and exterminated, and you blow me off. I can't believe it, but it's just, I guess it's not being engaged or not caring. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And maybe this is the year. I think, the thing is when this segment of the population wakes up and looks at the truth objectively and realizes how bad they've been treated, it's over for the Democrats. I mean, we've said it so many times on so many different shows that the truth is on our side, and it truly is. I mean, now granted, the Republican Party needs to clean itself up a little bit first. But by and large, I don't want to enslave anybody. I want everybody to be rich.
Yeah, or at least have a shot at, getting there or getting halfway there. But I mean, the leadership for the black community has done absolutely nothing for it financially, or standard of living. Nothing has changed. The poverty rate is still the same. And, like I say, their people are being butchered in these so-called abortion clinics or whatever. Nothing really good has come. I mean, the percentage that are working, there's people moving up, but the poor, in these inner cities and all that, nothing has changed for them really, except they get a few minutes on a cell phone.
Yeah, the only thing that's changed is over the last 50 years, the unwed mother rate has risen to like 70% of the births in the United States in the black community. And it's rising in every other community too. It's definitely not just a black problem, but it's a cultural problem that's turning our streets into sewers. I mean, these people that are walking the streets with no respect for life, no respect for anything. It's just horrible. It's just, it's tough. And over in Africa, it's even tougher. Up to a dozen terrorists from the jihadist group Boko Haram staged a pre-dawn ambush Sunday against the Christian border town of Ij that left at least 90 Christian villagers dead. Witnesses to the early morning attack against a small hamlet say gunmen who had surrounded Ij during the night burst into the town just before dawn, firing machine guns, tossing small explosives through open windows, torching dozens of houses and buildings, and gunning down those who tried to flee the carnage. One resident told Reuters, notice that they told Reuters because there wasn't any other news organization over there. As I'm talking to you now, all the dead bodies of the victims are still lying in the streets. We fled without burying them because we feared the terrorists were still lurking in the bushes. Other eyewitnesses claim hundreds of survivors fled their homes in panic. All the terrorists appear to have successfully retreated into their mountain hideouts. Nigerian authorities have not reported any arrests or apprehensions. So this is par for the course, not getting reported. And I guess that's just why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a president and a foreign policy that's not in the business of engagement. They're in the business of disengagement. And, Africa has been ignored for a long time. And what's happening in Africa, I mean, if something isn't done, the whole continent may end up being, an Islamic state at some time at the rate that things are going. Nobody's minding Africa right now. But just last week, Boko Haram, a particularly brutal Nigerian jihadist group, demanding the establishment of a strict Sharia state and forced the conversion of all Nigerian Christians to Islam, massacred 51 Christians using similar tactics outside a local government building in Kanduga. In May 2013, Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan surged troops to the northeast to protect vulnerable Christian villages from Boko Haram's increasingly brazen attacks. The Obama administration has long claimed that Boko Haram's jihad against Nigeria's Christians has nothing to do with religion and still refuses to formally designate Boko Haram as a terrorist group.
Unreal. I mean, in 2011, President Obama earmarked $600 million to support a U.S. aid initiative designed to study the true causes behind Boko Haram's terror campaign, which started in earnest after Goodluck Jonathan, a Christian, was elected president. Well, you should have sent that money over here, Mr. President. I wouldn't even have had to leave the studio. You know?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, talk about some easy money. But to say that it doesn't have anything to do with religion is just irresponsible. I mean, and this group, I don't know if it's Boko Haram, if they're the ones that originated in Somalia, or if that was Al-Shabaab. I think it was Al-Shabaab. But incidentally, the community in the United States represented by these people is Minneapolis. Minneapolis has a large contingent of Somali Muslims. Incidentally, they are represented by Keith Ellison, one of only two Muslim converts in Congress, a despicable man. But it seems like all of the terrorists come from his district.
And it's just a side note, Mr. Ellison is a member of the American Socialist Party, card-carrying member, just for some reference. But yeah, that Ellison guy, I mean, these are the kind of people he's supporting. The guy is a terrorist, in my opinion, and he's in elected office. That should concern everybody.
There's two of them. There's him and there's another guy. I can't remember the other guy's name. There's only two of them, but they ought to be. We need to wake up and grow up a little bit here, and lose the political correctness, and start dealing with Islam the way we need to. And all the evidence or all the case history or anything like that you need to study this is all available in England, in France, in Sweden, in Norway, anywhere in Scandinavia, in Dearborn, Michigan. It's starting. In Paterson, New Jersey, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I mean, there's no shortage of places to go to look and see what enclaves of these Muslims from overseas do. I mean, they have, we've spoken about it, longtime listeners of the show, this show and Steel City Resistance know that this is a written down plan. This is immigration jihad. There are several different types of jihad, and they're organized, and their sole purpose is over time to take over countries. And they're getting doggone close in England and France. And when we get on CPR, I hope we can have a dialogue with some of our listeners and maybe get some reports right on the ground. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, they sure would, and I bet you they have some reports too. We've talked before about the protesting, or actually harassing people about alcohol and other things. There's got to be some great stories to be told at what's going on over there for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be an adventure that I can't wait to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Cold War Radio with Mr. J on the Southern Perimeter, and I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. in the Northeastern Command in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're going to take a quick break for the news, and then we'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lisa Brady. An opposition rally underway in Kiev after concessions from Ukraine's president. But will the new truce hold? Fox News Radio's Jessica Gallagher monitoring this live in Sochi.
Lisa, a tenuous day in Ukraine as Moscow-leaning President Viktor Yanukovych signs a deal with the opposition aimed at ending the bloodshed. The pact calls for early presidential elections, a new constitution, and pardons protesters, among other things. This protester doesn't believe the pact will solve the crisis. He believes many people want Yanukovych out now. New elections will be held by December at the latest. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is urging the European Union to condemn the radicals responsible responsible for the violence. Lisa?
Jessica, the White House calling for close monitoring of the new agreement and still not ruling out sanctions. A storm that churned up a blizzard and suspected tornadoes in the Midwest is now threatening the East.
An incredible storm system. Multiple tornado watches in effect as far south as parts of South Carolina and as far north as parts of New Jersey, just south of the New York City area.
Fox meteorologist Maria Molina, D.C., Philly, Atlantic City, and Richmond among the areas included in tornado watches. Most drought-stricken California farmers will not get federal water. That decision just announced. Fox News Radio's Jessica Rosenthal, live in L.A.
Lisa, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation announced there's just not enough water here for most farmers in the Central Valley. It's not a shocking announcement given the historic drought, but still last year, many got 20% of their allocation and now they're getting zero. The Fresno Farm Bureau says this will force many farmers to idle a large amount of acreage, which would have generated jobs, and it affects the availability of safe, affordable food around the country. State water project officials had already said that they wouldn't be releasing any water either, Lisa.
Jessica, thanks. Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced.
Real experience, real insight.
We're following this explosive story.
Nothing gets by Greta. Then
this is all BS. What was that all about?
There's no spin and no question. O'Reilly dominates. Plus, smart, sharp, and cutting edge.
It's the news of the day, but with a little heat.
Megan delivers. And Sean seals the deal with fearless talk.
What part of that aren't you understanding?
Most watched, most trusted. Fox News Channel. There's more to Fox News Radio than meets the ear. Go behind the headlines and join the conversation on the hottest stories of the day on the Fox News Radio Facebook page. Be a part of the Fox News Radio Facebook fan community. Post comments and tell us your opinions. See behind-the-scenes photos and videos and post your reactions to the stories that matter to you. Click the like button on Facebook and connect with breaking news and features like Fox in the Fast Lane, House Call for Help, and more. Go to Facebook.com/Fox News Radio.
A film crew hit by a train in Georgia, where investigators now say no one gave permission for anyone to be on the tracks. Fox News Radio's Eben Brown has this live.
Elisa, an investigator says a movie crew shooting a film about the life of singer Greg Allman in the town of Jessup, Georgia, had no authorization to be on railroad tracks when a CSX freight train collided with all their equipment Thursday. A 27-year-old woman was killed in the incident. 7 others were hurt. The film crew had been granted access to the private property next to the tracks. Trespassing on railroad tracks is a misdemeanor in Georgia, though no word yet if charges have been filed, Lisa.
Eben, thanks. How to get Detroit out of bankruptcy. The city's emergency manager filing a plan today to restructure Detroit's $18 billion debt. It would make cuts to pensioners and creditors while offering a blueprint for the city to emerge from the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. Kevin Orr's plan filed in federal bankruptcy court today, an early draft. It called for city pensioners to get $4.3 billion in payments and bondholders about $1.1 billion during the next 40 years. The plan, though, still faces numerous obstacles, most aspects of it still being negotiated in mediation sessions. Old Man Winter trips up home sales.
Icy temperatures, snow, and sleet across much of the country send sales of existing homes down 5.1% in the latest monthly figures. Walter Maloney of the National Association of Realtors says,
some home sales simply are going to be delayed until spring.
The seasonally adjusted annual rate of existing home sales for January is 4.62 million, the least in a year and a half. This winter, the weather has also depressed new home sales and builders' expectations of coming business. In Washington, Steve Taylor, Fox News Radio.
Wall Street stocks have been higher, the Dow up 8 points. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News Radio.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret. Silver wings upon their chest, these are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 when when the Green Beret, trained to live off nature's land, trained in combat hand to hand, men who fight by night and day, courage take from the Green Beret, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 when the Green Beret. Back at home, a young wife waits. Her Green Beret has met his fate. He has died for those oppressed, leaving her this last request. Put silver wings on my son's chest. Make him one of America's best.
Sergeant Barry Sadler, ladies and gentlemen, Cold War hero, and a real Cold War song. Yeah, that was one that I listened to early and often when I was younger, and that's the kind of music you're going to hear here on the show. Music that's related to the time, even though, as we say, don't listen to the left, it's not over.
That's exactly right.
Now, I think we're going to move over to Iran, because they're starting to use their oil as a crutch with Russia, and that's not too uplifting. They want a Russian reactor in exchange for oil, it seems.
Yeah, that's right. Iran's ambassador to Moscow on Monday said Russia could build the Islamic Republic a second nuclear power reactor under a proposed oil for goods swap that has raised grave concerns in Washington. Ambassador Sanai said the two close trading partners have been negotiating Iran's delivery of hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil a day since a meeting at the regional summit in September between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his counterpart Hassan Rouhani. Russian officials have neither confirmed nor denied the discussions, while stressing that they would not break existing UN sanctions on the Islamic State.
You got to wonder, don't they understand that they don't like them either? I mean, this is just something that I understand, that there's geopolitical deals that have to be made, and you don't do them with all your allies all the time. You have to deal with some unsavory groups, but Putin's dealing with his own Islamic problem in the Caucasus.
Yeah, it's you have to wonder what's really, it looks like business as usual. They're trying to get business as usual back going in Iran, but I wonder if Moscow is just thinking that they can maybe make the United States look even more impotent with this.
That's what I'm thinking. The same thing. I'm thinking this is all we're going to get everything while we can, while this impotent president is in the United States, and they're doing a good job of it too. I mean, Putin has really looked. I've even caught myself posting, and I'm a cold warrior, posting Facebook posts that that show Putin in a good light.
Well, the White House has raised quote-unquote serious concern about the potential deal, which that means nothing, which one Russian report said involved the delivery of 500,000 barrels of crude per day, because it would boost Iran's oil exports by more than 50%. Iran's crude shipments are believed to have shrunk under the impact of the unilateral Western sanctions to less than 1 million barrels per day from the 2.5 million barrel day figure they reached in 2011. So I think they're just going back to making money.
Yeah, you're right. And one thing that that Donald Trump was excoriated for. There I go using that Sean Hannity word again. But Donald Trump, everybody said he was crazy when he said that when we finished in Iraq, we should have taken some oil. And, the more I think of it, the more that's true. We got absolutely nothing from that country, and we gave it all back anyway, but we have to start looking out for ourselves a little more. And I'm not saying we should have gone over there and that the war was for oil or something like that, but I think Iraq is our third biggest importer. We are the third. Iraq, we import oil from Iraq more than every country but two. I think that's correct. I'm not positive, but I think it is. And, I mean, couldn't we have got a little bit on the elbow, Couldn't we got a little for free after we spent all our treasure and lives over there?
I agree. I mean, I'm not advocating a soldier of fortune thing, but I mean, a little something for the effort. I mean...
They should have initiated it.
I agree.
We shouldn't even have had to ask. They should have came up with it.
Especially when you hear about, our military being charged like $100 a gallon for some of their vehicles and stuff overseas. You're right. They should have offered it.
Now, there's while we're talking about Russia, let's talk about the Ukraine. It was, you see John Kerry and I just don't like the idea of having John Kerry representing anything. I mean, this guy out there, he's so out of touch and he's out there in the middle of all these things going on, all these Islamic attacks, the attacks in the Ukraine. I mean, they're starting to use snipers over there against these protesters. And the protesters don't have a chance. I mean, pretty soon you're going to see T-80s in the street over there. You're going to see Russian tanks before too long. And then you have all this going on in Iran, and you have what's going on in Israel and just all across the whole area. And John Kerry's talking about global warming.
Yeah, it's like he's denying reality or something. And, you got to look at what's going on in Venezuela. And there's some other things popping up in Central America, too, that may need to be watched. It's like the world is destabilizing. It's definitely
absolutely
changing.
And, I mean, you look down in Venezuela is a good subject to bring up, because if the Democrat Party in the United States got everything that they wanted, we would be just like Venezuela, and they would be killing their opponents, their political opponents. They would be killing Republicans, because that's what they do. And there's historic background on all this. It's been happening in Central America forever. It's actually been happening all over the world forever.
It has. I mean, you look at Venezuela, a country that's fairly rich for its size with natural resources, and the people are broke. They can't even afford toilet paper. Well, look what this president's trying to do over here. He's trying to curtail us from exploiting our natural resources and making a lot of people poor at the same time, or keeping them poor.
And you look at what he's doing with our medical system. I think the fourth hospital just recently closed in Georgia. I mean, that's not something that you can just turn around and have an election and change.
That's right. I mean, and you get rid of these hospitals, the hospitals will start getting farther and farther away, and that just, puts more lives in danger. And then you got the flight of the helicopter. I mean, if they get the hospital too far away, they've got to put everybody in a helicopter if they want to.
Yeah, it's something else. It's something that, and it makes me get a little cold-blooded at times, too. I'll see some of these stories that you see in the different news agencies about, I don't know, somebody needed a hip replacement and they couldn't get it because they were, because of Obamacare restrictions. And I'm thinking, I hope that's a Democrat. That's wrong, but, I do. I want them to feel some pain, man. Let them, what's the old saying? The people have spoken and now they must be punished.
Well, you get what you vote for. I mean, that's the fact. I mean, they wanted this thing, and they can't tell me that, well, they were fooled or they were tricked. I'm saying, bull crap. You didn't do your homework. You didn't read it. You didn't look at it. You didn't investigate it. You just trusted the word of somebody that told you that. So
somebody that worked for them in NBC or CBS. I'm not even going to MSNBC. It's the hard networks now. NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, they're all in the tank. I don't know if you got a chance to see Wolf Blitzer and Newt Gingrich the other night, but Blitzer wanted Newt Gingrich to denounce Ted Nugent for calling the president a subhuman, I can't remember what the word was, but it was a mongrel, a subhuman mongrel, and Blitzer wanted to equate that with Nazi Germany and what they called the Jews. And Gingrich wasn't having it. He was like, you know what? You denounced Joe Biden, the sitting president of the United States, standing in front of a black audience saying that Romney was going to put them back in chains. You say something about that first before I talk about a retired rock legend.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly, they try to tie two separate things together to try to make a big stink out of it. I guess Ted did apologize for it, which I thought, well, he probably didn't really have to, but he probably got some pressure on it. But I mean, that's what their agenda is. And you're right, we don't need to pay a lot of attention to MSNBC because we've all but defeated them. I mean, they're irrelevant. It's the big three now. They're the only ones that have an audience, and it just happens to be probably because they're over the air, and most people get their television from over the air.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, don't think that you don't have something to do with that. The new media is getting stronger and stronger, and I'm realizing this in my own experience with the caliber of people that are willing to talk with us, on the air, on streams. We're getting top-notch attention, and the realization is there that we are a more bona fide outlet for the truth than these Democrat networks will ever be. For instance, we're going to go to CPAC, and we're going to far outnumber the legacy media, and I just think that's an excellent development. It's only been gaining momentum, and for our organization that we're affiliated with, it's really picking up steam.
Well, the mainstream media has nobody to blame but themselves. We don't answer to a board of directors. We answer to the truth. We'll go wherever it takes us, and that gives us some flexibility because we don't have a board of directors. So they had it coming, but the point of the new media, I mean, we are so much more adapted to getting the story out, and the story we did on Steel City Resistance, that thing just took off, and it was just shared hundreds of thousands of times via Twitter and Facebook I have no idea. I'm sure that's in the billions. So
that's really good. That's a good deal. I saw, I'll send it to you after the show, a post. You might have seen it already, but former Congressman LaTourette came out and declared that Ted Cruz should leave the Republican Party. I saw that story today. So that was interesting. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the segment that all of you historians in the audience have been waiting for. From the Southern Command, it's Mr. J, and today, in Cold War history.
Cold War history for February 21. In 1952, the British government, under Winston Churchill, abolishes identity cards in the UK to, quote-unquote, set the people free. And again in 1952, the Bengali language movement protests occur at the University of Dhaka in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And in 1958, the peace symbol, commissioned by Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament in protest against the atomic weapons research establishment, is designed and completed by Gerald Holtom. In 1965, Malcolm X is assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City by members of the Nation of Islam. And in 1970, Swiss Air Flight 330, a mid-air bomb explosion and subsequent crash kills 38 passengers and 9 crew members near Zurich, Switzerland. In 1972, President Richard Nixon visits the People's Republic of China to normalize Sino-American relations. And again in 1972, the Soviet unmanned spaceship Luna 20 lands on the moon. In 1973, over the Sinai Desert, Israeli fighter aircraft shoot down Libyan Arab Airlines Flight 114 jet, killing 108. And in 1974, the last Israeli soldiers leave the West Bank of the Suez Canal pursuant to a truce with Egypt. And that was your Today in Cold War history, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll tell you, that was there's always some interesting things in that report, Mr. J. It's I can't say that I remember the Israelis shooting down that Libyan jet, though. I usually remember most of those things, and that one I'm going to have to look into a little.
Yeah, I was a youngster when that one happened, so I don't remember it. But I thought I didn't see anything on the news, in history about the Malcolm X assassination. So that was quite strange.
That was the story behind that was that Malcolm X actually went to Mecca, and he had some changing of heart on some of the things that the Nation of Islam was doing, and apparently they didn't appreciate that, and some have even said that Louis Farrakhan was directly involved. So I'm not really sure about that. Maybe that's something that we can research a little deeper, but I know it had to do with him getting into some of the tenets of Islam, probably some of the good ones, and realizing that the whole racial thing was wrong, but we'll have to figure that out. I think there was some behavior in the leadership, some human behavior that he didn't appreciate was going on, but I'm not sure. That will be an interesting topic, and there's one that I didn't hit on because I think we're going to take it to Steel City Resistance, but the story, I'll give you a little teaser. There's an FBI document, some documents that raise additional questions about Saudi and al-Awlaki's connections to the 9/11 attacks. We weren't really told the truth about all that, and there's some really revealing things from Judicial Watch in that report. So we don't have enough time. I'm going to probably lead with it on Sunday or something. We'll have to figure that out.
Well, there's one.
Good.
There's one story that piqued my interest. Growing up in the time that we did, seeing things that looked futuristic, and now seeing them come to fruition is quite remarkable.
So true.
The Navy is ready to deploy a laser system this summer. I mean, could you imagine saying that in 1974? You're like, yeah, right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's so many things like that. I mean, the flying cars, and even I remember going to, it's a science museum type place in the city called Buell Planetarium, and I remember being a kid and they had a computer in there. The computer was as big as an electric substation. I mean, it was inside its own room, inside a room of plexiglass, and I think the thing could multiply or something. You know what I mean? It was giant, this thing. And then they had push button telephones with little TV screens over them. So it was like a video phone. And everybody's like, no way, man, they're never going to do anything like that, And then you look at what we do, almost a Hollywood production of a show a few times a week. That's you just couldn't even imagine that 10 years ago. That's why I never really give Spreecast a hard time, because Spreecast has taken us from the choppy level to the good level.
That's absolutely right. The technology is really on the new media side. I mean, one of the people that I've watched on Spreecast is a network, over-the-air network. It's a CW affiliate, and they fired all their staff. They've got the two anchors, a weatherman, and a sports guy, but the cameras, they're all remote control. I mean, the robots control them, and they just know where to stand at a certain time. I mean, there's no news people anymore. It's just they just read off the screen, and
yeah.
It's all automated. But the Navy plans to deploy its first laser ship later this year and intends to test an electromagnetic railgun prototype aboard a vessel within 2 years. I'm not really sure what the second is, but it sounds pretty cool.
It does. It absolutely. The Navy's really on the cutting edge of technology, even with their $45 a gallon biofuel that they dump into those tanks. I mean, that's always fun. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to CPAC. So that's something that's coming up real soon. I'm going to have to decide how to get the equipment there here momentarily. I don't have much time left to do that, so I'm going to have to figure that out. You looking forward to that?
I am stoked about it. I know I'm going to be dog-tired after each day, but it'll be worth it. I'm bringing one suitcase and one case for the computer stuff, and I'm not sure which means I'm going to take to get there, but get there nonetheless. I will, and can't wait.
Yeah, I can't either. I didn't really decide how I'm going to do this yet, but we've got a lot of equipment to get there, and we've got some things to figure out, which we will. I mean, we've got some pretty good interviews coming your way, and we will have episodes of Cold War Radio on the ground at CPAC for sure. Not sure what time they're going to be, but now that we have the capability to live stream, I can promise you that we'll have something there, that's for sure. And with that, Mr. J, I'm going to send it over to you and let you tell the folks just how they can get in touch with you.
All right, thanks, Hutch, and thank you to the listeners. You can find me at www.mrjausa.com or MRJAUSA Facebook, Twitter, and Tea Party community. The show notes will be up within 15 minutes at coldwarradio.wordpress.com. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, sir, and I always appreciate you coming on and guarding the southern perimeter of the area. And as we go, we'll expand out a little bit more. And my name is Hutch Bailey Jr. on Berg's Eye View on Twitter, Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, and catch Steel City Resistance on Spreecast Sunday nights at 7 p.m. If you follow me on those social media outlets, you'll be able to find out exactly when and where they are. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cold War Radio, and we are shutting her down.